Took to the streets to protest against President William Ruto's persistent attacks on the judiciary. And LSK President Eric Theuri, who led the protest in Nairobi, called on President William Ruto to stop the anti-judiciary utterances, terming them as a serious interference to the independence of the judicial arm of government. And our senior political affairs reporter Daniel Kariuki had a sit-down with LSK President Eric Theuri to pick on his mind on what is the next move that LSK might be taking. Enjoy the rest of your viewing, including this interview. My name is Brenda Zederadido. Thank you so much for your time. And sign language interpreter is Philip Omondi. Good night.
Right, thank you very much and welcome to this interview with the Law Society of Kenya President Eric Theuri, just happening at a week when we have seen a lot of statements concerning the judiciary versus the executive versus President William Ruto. The president insisting that he will ensure those that are corrupt in the judiciary have been removed, and also saying that there are people who are moving to courts to stop his development agenda. Well, at a time this is happening, it is actually the best time to have this interview with the President of the Law Society of Kenya. Thank you very much, Eric, for joining us here on KTN News so that we discuss these matters concerning the judiciary and the executive, as well as the Law Society of Kenya. First and foremost, today you are having peaceful demonstrations across the Central Business District, and I saw senior counsel attending these peaceful demonstrations. Were they successful, and did you achieve the agenda?
I think they were extremely successful. The reason why we had this protest march was to bring to the attention of the country the willingness, the readiness of lawyers in this country to defend the rule of law and the Constitution. And that is why you saw that when we came out, before we proceeded on the march, we affirmed the oaths that we all took at the time when we were admitted as advocates of Kenya, as a further demonstration of our commitment to protest against any attempt to take us back to those days when this country was ruled at the whims and wishes of one man, as opposed to the current constitutional dispensation that Kenyans gave themselves when they enacted the Constitution, that every power would be restrained and that the supreme organ would be the Constitution of Kenya.
The president has insisted, President William Ruto has insisted that there are few characters in the judiciary that they need to be investigated, and that corruption and impunity has been part of the judiciary. Of course, you have been the president for the last 1 year or so, and you have been in these courts. Could the president be right, maybe?
I think that, to be fair, there are some good judges and there are some bad judges and judicial officers. We know that there are some who have challenges and questions of integrity. So that would be a fair assessment to make. And that the judiciary, just like any other arm of government, is struggling with dealing with the question of corruption. So that is also a fair statement to make. And I think the danger of the blanket accusations is that since this is an assessment that is easy to make. For example, if I lose a case and I allege I lost it because the other person bribed the court, it might not be true, but since generally speaking, people know that bribes are taken, the presumption would be that actually what I am saying might be true. So I think what the president is doing is to build on already existing public perception and use that public perception to justify an unwarranted attack on the judiciary.
Now, on the 4th of January this year, I think this is the time that the back and forth between the judiciary and the executive was very ripe, and actually the president, for the first time as the president, we saw him tweet something to show his confidence on matters to do with the corruption in the judiciary. And he actually, his tweet, that's currently they're calling it X, said that Ahmed Nasir, senior counsel, you warned me of sabotage by corrupt judicial officers. I told you there are many good officers in the judiciary, and that we will not root out the corrupt. We will root out the corrupt. We shall make that possible. And also went ahead also to mention senior counsel Muite. You as the president of the Law Society of Kenya, it seems there are some lawyers also who feel like there is a lot that needs to be done in the judiciary.
That's true. In fact, even on ourselves as the Law Society, we feel that a lot more needs to be done by the judiciary to tackle corruption within its ranks. So that, I think, is a fair statement. But look at the context in which those statements are coming. The head of state is a symbol of national unity. The head of state is the president of the country and has institutions under him that have been mandated to fight corruption. That is the ESCC and the police. The president should not, in my view, turn himself into a one-man vigilante on corruption within the judiciary. The other question you want to ask yourself is this. These attacks started almost immediately after his New Year's address, in terms of saying that there are elements that are frustrating government agenda. You probably are aware that the first week of January, the Court of Appeal was considering the application for stay that has been filed by the government, seeking to stay the implementation of the three-bench decision by the High Court, pending hearing and determination of the appeal that has been filed. Right. So again, that is something that you want to take into context.
So are you saying maybe this statement said, he actually made these statements maybe to maybe intimidate the judges before they gave the ruling? Yes.
In my view, the statements are directly linked and related to the case that was coming up in the Court of Appeal, because he kept on referencing the housing project. And then the other thing that we also have to take into consideration is the fact that while the government has appealed the three-bench decision, it has also started the process of enactment of the Affordable Housing Act. That is the Affordable Housing Bill of 2023, which was before Parliament and was supposed to come up for public participation until the court gave an order stopping Parliament from proceeding to interrogate the provisions of that. So all those things have to be taken into context. And then third, the president's remarks have been to the effect that they are people, civil society, who are coming together with other people to corrupt judges, to derail government agenda. And who are those people? Some of those people are the Law Society, who have gone to court to challenge, for example, like the housing levy. So then, when you take that again into context, you actually begin to see where this attack is intended. Because if this was a legitimate concern with regards to corruption within the judiciary, then the president would not be lamenting from the top of his car in the market streets, in the villages, in public gatherings, he would be asking the institutions very silently that are required, that have the constitutional authority to investigate these issues, to investigate, get that evidence, prepare the petitions and present them before the Judicial Service Commission for purposes of prosecution as per the law, as laid out in the law.
But now, the president's concern, we have heard that there are people who move to court. Maybe sometimes there is maybe a tender that was not awarded to someone somewhere, and this person decides to use some activists to move to court to block the project or the works by the government. And we actually had it even in the previous regime. I remember the Interior CS talking that time. He actually used the example of Okiya Mtata and saying that there is one person moving to court, the current senator for Busia, moving to court and getting orders. Every time the person moves to court, gets orders in what he insinuated dealing with some of the judicial officers. Don't you think maybe the same thing has not really changed in the courts and it could be happening? And this has actually angered the president?
Let's also cut the judiciary some slack, because one other thing is this: when those projects are stopped, we also know that most of these projects have other concerns. That whenever there is a huge tender, that there are varied interests that are involved in this, and that when one interest loses over the other, then they go to court. So you would find that in most of these cases, it's not like the deal is above board. Yeah, there is a lot of things in the deal that are not making sense, that are therefore forcing, when they then go to court, it becomes easy for some of those things to be stopped. For example, you've seen in Kakamega, where courts have issued orders preventing the demolition of certain properties, but those properties are nonetheless demolished because the government intends to develop affordable housing on those properties. What does that then say about the rule of law? At that point, then, you begin to get at that point where you are looking at it as a situation of two wrongs, making a right, which is extremely unfortunate. To
be happening. Yeah. Now, the president was actually, his victory was approved by the Supreme Court, actually upheld his victory. Right now, it seems there is a big tussle between him and the judiciary. What could have happened, maybe? Because that time they looked to be very close and working in collaboration. He even went to the extent of even adding, increasing the budget, putting about 3 billion to the budget of the judiciary, or other operations of the judiciary. Now, what could have happened, really?
Let me say this. When the president came into office and promised that he'll support the judiciary and that he'll actually allocate them an additional 3 billion, I was a very worried man. And my concern was this, that where is the president getting the authority to promise that he will give the judiciary an extra 3 billion over their budget, whereas that 3 billion is government money that must be allocated in a particular way? So, in my own estimation, I saw that as an incentive being given to the judiciary so that it can be friendly to the government. That was my interpretation of that statement, and at that particular time we took exception to that statement, and we kept on asking the judiciary to avoid being seen to be close to the executive, because that in itself will affect the confidence of the members of the public in the ability of the courts to remain independent and make decisions against the government. So what I think is that there was an overt courting mission of the judiciary that did not work. There was an attempt to court the judiciary by promising them additional funds, which the president has no authority to promise, but then it never worked. And the judiciary has done its work in the cases that have appeared before them in a manner in which it ought to deal with them. For example, the Law Society initially challenged the appointment of the principal secretaries on the basis that they did not comply with the gender principle, among other issues. And the courts, in our view, threw out our case on grounds that we did not agree with. Then we had the option of either going to appeal or criticizing the decision in a manner that any other member of the public can criticize a court decision within certain bounds, because we all have freedom of expression. But we could not have gone ahead to start saying that, you know, we lost those cases because the judiciary was bribed by the executive to give that decision, because that would be reckless. Now, the president was very happy with that decision, because eventually they got their PSs into office. But then when we challenged the decision of CAS, the president wasn't extremely happy with that court decision. When we challenged the housing levy, the president wasn't happy with that decision. So it is, in our view, extremely unfortunate for the president to descend to the arena of rumor mongering and character assassination by saying that because they have lost cases in the judiciary, those cases have been lost because of corruption. Because then what it means is that on the other side of the cases which the government has won, the opposing party who lost would also be alleging that that case was lost or won by the government because of corruption. And that is a pretty ridiculous state of affairs that we can get to, and it affects the confidence of anyone who wants to come and invest in this country. It affects the confidence of even the local investors who have money and would want to invest in this country. It throws a question of legitimacy across the entire judiciary. And so people begin to ask themselves, if the president can disregard the law and he's just a Kenyan like me, why shouldn't I also disregard a court order? Why shouldn't I also disregard a court of law? Right. And what does that build to? That results in anarchy.
Mm-hmm. Now, the fights, the relations with between the executive and the judiciary, it is not the first time we are seeing such things happening. Even during the previous regime, the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was also engaged in such kind of back and forth with the Chief Justice, David Maraga. Now, are we going to see is this kind of happenings coming to an end anytime soon, the executive versus the judiciary? Because right now it even seems to be even more serious than we thought.
I would want to be optimistic, but I think that I keep on saying this in one way or the other. It is a good thing that the executive is extremely unhappy by decisions that are being made by the judiciary. Because what it basically means is that the courts are then exercising their mandate independently, and as a result of exercising their mandate independently, the executive is unhappy with those decisions. You must take into consideration the history of this country. The history of this country, especially before the 2010 Constitution, was one where the executive was more powerful. The executive was largely dictatorial. The executive was not used to checks and balances. There was a time when it was unusual to give orders stopping a decision that has been made by the president. So there is an old culture that has existed for a very long time within government. And so therefore, when you make a decision against the head of state, it shocks a lot of people. And it goes back to a culture of impunity, a culture of the executive being above the law, being above question, and being the one that is dictating the pace and the views and the opinions of every other institution around it.
Right. I have seen also other leaders, top-ranking leaders, also talk about the judiciary previously. And today you even organized peaceful demonstrations. For instance, let me use the Azimio leader, Raila Odinga. At one point, when the judiciary, or rather the Supreme Court judges upheld the victory of President William Ruto, we saw the former Prime Minister come out, guns blazing, and said that the judiciary is turning rogue, especially because of the evidence that was presented at the Supreme Court. You remember the ruling, part of the ruling, there was some wild goose, and there are some statements that were used, and the Odinga was furious with them and actually said judiciary is turning rogue. Why didn't you come out really to defend the judiciary with the same zeal we have seen this time round? Because those were very strong statements. He actually went ahead to say, shame on the judiciary because of the ruling.
One thing, when the Supreme Court made its decision, on our part, and I think we expressed our displeasure with the language that was used by the Supreme Court. We felt that that language was a little bit too tough on the parties, considering where the country had come from, and considering that on such matters, such as election petitions, they are extremely emotive, and so therefore you have to understand that when you make that decision, you are making a decision that affects almost half of the country that was supporting one, especially the losing candidate, because the margins of loss are usually not very high. And so you have to be sensitive to those feelings. And we did criticize that. But second and most important is that each and every one of us as a Kenyan now also has a right to criticize decisions that have been made by the court within certain bounds, exercising our right of freedom of expression. So that is granted, and you would not want to take that away from anyone.
Right.
But the question here is one of who is doing it. The president occupies a completely enviable set within our constitutional architecture. Is, to speak in a manner of speaking like Olo Aringo, the father of the nation, right? Is the custodian of the Constitution. And so he has a higher responsibility when it comes to protection of the Constitution, when it comes to ensuring that the country has institutions that are functional. And so when you consider the risk of an individual, for example, let's assume for purposes of this discussion, for example, like Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga was to say, I will not obey a court order, he will obviously be cited for contempt. and the police can enforce that order against the person of Raila Odinga. But can you imagine a situation where the president says, I will not obey a court order, then the court issues an order for contempt, and then tells IG to go and arrest the president? Do you even, I mean, it's almost impossible for that to happen. And so it is that you look at. Yeah, the person and the institution that is making those statements, and noting the constitutional prestige of the presidency, and understanding that this person is actually the head of government, which is composed of the three arms, and has a responsibility to ensure that they nurture and support those institutions. And one way, when you're dealing with the judiciary, one way to nurture the judiciary and to support it in service delivery is to fight corruption within the judiciary.
Right. Thank you. I think we have discussed much about the judiciary and the executive, the wars within. Now you are the president of the LSK. Your term is coming to an end very soon. Elections are going to be happening in a few weeks' time. Already people have started, or rather aspirants have started having their applications. Now, as the LSK president, how have you been able to guide the LSK for the last, like, 1 year? You've been in charge.
Yes, it's well. It's almost coming to 2 years, because my term will end this year I was almost about to say next year, but we're already in 2024. Time flies very fast. So my term ends in March of this year, so I only have 2 months in office. It's been quite a roller coaster. We've had a lot of work to be done. We had a society, we took over a law society that was dysfunctional. Service provision was at its lowest ebb, and confidence, the members of the public and even our own members had lost confidence in the society. And you have to appreciate that the law society enjoys a very special place in the democratic space that we enjoy in terms of the work that it has previously done. And so the law society enjoys a prestige and a very special place in the hearts of Kenyans. And we needed to restore that pride and dignity that was associated with the law society. We had challenges with getting our practicing certificates, which are important for us to get work from other partners. And so we had to review the entire process and automate it, and that worked very well. We had challenges with work with lawyers getting work, so we had to try and look at how work with the judiciary to roll out the small claims courts to courts other than Nairobi, to roll out e-filing to courts outside Nairobi, to bring our members together, both the young and the old. We've had lunches with the senior members. We've had lunches or mentorship events organized for young lawyers. We've organized different bar associations, the UK, specifically the England and Bar Wales, to have exchange programs. They are doing mentoring for some of our young lawyers. Their barristers are doing that. We've had 1 or 2 sessions where lawyers from England have come to the country, and we've had exchanges of information and just discussing contemporary legal issues with a view to creating connections for lawyers that are in Kenya with lawyers across the other parts of the country. So we've had all that. We've managed for the first time to get a members' resolution towards development of our properties in South Sea and Gitanga Road. And I hope that in the next council would then be able to actualize those plans, that they'll give plans which members will approve and actualize those plans. So there's been quite a lot that we have done. We have reorganized the secretariat. We have put our employees on performance management. We have tried to ease in the question of communication. Of course, we still have challenges, but by and large, we've managed to sort out most of those things, the corporate structures, corporate governance structures. We have created and crafted a number of policies that were not there. We have reviewed a number of policies that had not been reviewed for 5, 6, 7 years that are critical to running the organization. So I feel that we have done the foundational work to grow the Law Society into a leader of excellence in the global stage.
Of course, during your tenure is when we witnessed, and Brian Mwenda was discovered to be a fake lawyer. Maybe have you set ground on how maybe you are going to ensure that we don't have such cases? And by the way, how far is that case?
Yes, the Brian Mwenda case exposed a vulnerability in our system, and that being that someone could impersonate you, create an email address, look at your account, see it is inactive, since you share the same name or you have closer names, then pretend to be you. Write to the secretariat and ask them to change the email, which is your gateway into the system, which is what Brian did. So we have upgraded our system to the level where it gives, there's a two-step authentication. You have an OTP notification on your phone, and then you will have an also email confirmation that will come to you telling you changes have been done, and if they are not, you're able to. So that at least will sort out the issue of any masquerader attempting to get into the system through the back door. Yes.
As we wrap up, of course, I know you're not going to be vying for the president's position again in the Law Society of Kenya, and you're seeking to be a member of the Judicial Service Commission. Maybe as we wrap up, what are you looking forward as you head into the election and as you seek the mandate to be in the JSC?
We have quite a number of people who have also applied for the same. I'm optimistic, extremely optimistic from the interactions that we've had with the membership, that they understand and appreciate the environment that we are operating in. They understand and appreciate that there is a need for effective representation in the Judicial Service Commission, with a view of ensuring its independence and also holding the judiciary accountable in terms of exercise of judicial power, and also the resources that are available to the judiciary. But most importantly, to also work on the question of efficiency. How efficient is the judiciary? How are the services? So we are optimistic that given my track record, the fact that I've been in leadership, that I've been tried and I've been tested and I've been proven, that will give me an edge over the other candidates. And when you look at everything in totality, the question of the ideal representative at the Judicial Service Commission is one who can actually make a difference, one who has excelled in leadership. And I want to believe that I have excelled and proven myself as a capable leader as a president of the Law Society. And that then gives me a greater grounding and better grounding to be able to serve members at the Judicial Service Commission.
Right, and of course, you're in a better position for it, as you say, and we wish you all the best as you look forward to joining the JSC, if, of course, you win that competition. That has been Eric Theuri, the president of the Law Society of Kenya, talking to us about matters to do with the judiciary, matters to do with the rule of law in the country and the happenings that we have witnessed in the last couple of days. And we'll be following keenly to see the end of this back and forth and the judiciary versus the executive wars that we have witnessed lately. And from me, Daniel Kariuki, I want to wish you good time.